Chapter 1. The Setup. Labor Day weekend. The sun was high and merciless, baking the back patio in a golden glaze as the grill hissed beneath Michael's careful attention. The smell of marinated chicken, slow-cooking ribs, and roasted corn swirled through the air as laughter bubbled from the backyard. It was Labor Day, an American ritual of beer, barbecue, and too much sunscreen. And for Michael Harper, 44, this was supposed to be a break from the grind, a reward for working 60-hour weeks as a construction foreman. The house was full of family, and everything looked normal. But something fell off. Camila, his wife of 19 years, flitted from guest to guest like a hostess possessed. Her smile was tight. Her eyes didn't linger on him the way they used to. She wore a red sundress that he used to call trouble on two legs, and she laughed a little too loud at something Shane, his best friend, had said. Michael turned the skewers, watching the meat slowly darken, juices sizzling into the coals. His hands were steady, but something in his gut twisted like rebar being bent in a vise. "Dad," his daughter Lily called, pausing on the steps, holding her phone out. "Mom says not to burn the ribs this time, remember?" "Thanks for the vote of confidence, sweetheart," he replied with a soft chuckle. "Tell her I've got it under control." Lily nodded, but lingered a second too long, staring at him like she was about to say something. Then she turned and disappeared inside. Michael's smile faded. Inside the house, through the screen door, he could hear murmurs, hushed voices. Not urgent, but calculated. Camila leaned into her sister, whispering something, both glancing toward him as if they were sharing a secret too delicious for his ears. He had half a mind to step inside and ask what was going on, but what would he say? "Hey, honey, you're acting like a Bond villain. Everything all right?" Instead, he took a long sip from his beer and kept flipping the ribs. A few minutes later, Camila reappeared, wiping her hands on a floral dish towel. "Babe," she called, her voice too sugary. "Could you run to the garage and grab the special sauce? It's on the second shelf by the toolbox." He frowned slightly. "We still have that stuff? Thought we used it up last month." "Nope," she chirped. "Bought more. I hid it so the kids wouldn't sneak it for sandwiches. Go grab it, okay?" Michael nodded and wiped his hands on a rag, brushing past his brother Eric on the way. "Hey, Mike," Eric said, clapping a hand on his shoulder. "We still on for that hunting trip in November?" Michael nodded slowly. "Wouldn't miss it." But Eric's eyes didn't match the words. They were distant, avoidant. The garage door creaked open with a dry moan, and Michael stepped into the cool dimness, expecting to see shelves of tools, old sports gear, and the box fan he never threw out. Instead, what greeted him stopped him cold. Two black suitcases. His suitcases. The kind he only used for work trips or family vacations. Packed and zipped up neatly, like luggage at an airport check-in. He blinked, walked closer. There was a piece of paper taped to the handle of the larger one. A printed note. No handwriting. Cold, clean Times New Roman font. "We voted. You're out, loser. New locks go on at 7 p.m. His breath left him in a quiet whoosh. He staggered back, staring. What the hell was this? Some kind of joke? A terrible silence fell over him, wrapping around his chest like a straitjacket. He turned slowly toward the narrow garage window, the one that faced the backyard, and what he saw next shattered whatever hope remained. There they were. Camila, her sister, their teenage kids, his brother, even his parents, all gathered by the patio table. Someone, Shane, of course, was holding up a hand. And one by one, they raised theirs too. A goddamn vote. Like it was a game. Like his life was a shareholder meeting and he had just been outvoted. Evicted. Canceled. Michael watched them laughing, sipping drinks, completely unaware he was witnessing it all from behind the glass. Their heads nodded in agreement. Camila stood with her hands on her hips, smug and confident, the red dress swaying slightly in the breeze like a victory flag. He couldn't hear the words, but the betrayal screamed in his ears. Everything he'd built, every broken back day on a construction site, every missed vacation, every compromise, every sleepless night spent worrying about bills so she and the kids wouldn't have to, all of it was being tossed out like garbage. His own family, his wife, his blood. Michael stood frozen for what felt like minutes, breathing heavily through his nose. A storm swirled inside him: rage, heartbreak, disbelief. His fists clenched, knuckles pale, jaw tight. He thought of kicking the door open, marching outside, demanding answers, screaming. But then he didn't. Instead, he stepped back, slowly, carefully. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. His thumb hovered for a second, then pressed the contact. Attorney Barnes. It rang twice. Mike, the calm voice answered on the other end. Did something happen? Yes, Michael said softly, his voice flat and calm, like the eye of a hurricane. Initiate everything we discussed. Right now. There was a short pause. Are you sure? Michael's eyes flicked once more to the scene outside. Camila was hugging Shane, whispering something in his ear. I've never been more sure of anything, he replied. He ended the call. Then, without another word, without slamming the door or confronting his soul, Michael walked out of the garage. Not through the backyard, not past the people who had just collectively destroyed his life, but through the side gate, down the gravel path, out of sight. He disappeared. And the next morning, as the sun rose on the remnants of the barbecue, his phone buzzed endlessly on a hotel nightstand in a different city. 88 missed calls, all from her lawyer. Chapter 2. Red Flags and Hidden Truths. 6 months before that fiery Labor Day weekend, the changes began as small ripples, barely noticeable at first. Camila had always been lively, full of warmth and laughter, but around that time, Michael noticed a subtle shift. It started with her newfound obsession with fitness. She began waking up before dawn to jog, signing up for yoga classes, and spending hours at the gym. At first, Michael smiled and teased, "Since when did you turn into a fitness fanatic?" But her answers grew clipped, almost distracted. She came home later, much later. On some nights, she didn't come home at all. One Tuesday evening, Michael was washing dishes after a long, grueling day at the site when Camila slipped quietly through the back door. Her face was flushed, sweaty from exercise, but her eyes darted nervously. "Hey," she said, forcing a smile. "I'm just really tired. Long day." Michael nodded, trying to shake off the odd vibe. "Need help with anything?" She shook her head, avoiding his gaze. But as weeks passed, the little oddities accumulated. Camila started locking her phone more rigorously, always pulling it close when Michael was nearby. She'd get texts at all hours, stepping outside to reply. He caught her deleting messages quickly, closing apps the moment he walked in the room. Michael swallowed the growing knot in his chest and chalked it up to stress. Maybe she was just going through a tough patch. Work was busy, bills were piling, and the kids had their own chaos. Maybe she was lonely, too. But what hurt most wasn't her distance. It was the tension that followed every interaction. Arguments erupted over trivial things. The way he loaded the dishwasher, the brand of coffee he bought, whether to watch the game or a cooking show on TV. Small fights that left both of them drained and angry. One evening, Michael sat on the couch, staring at the muted TV, watching Camila pace back and forth in the kitchen. "Why are you acting like this?" he finally asked, voice low. She stopped, eyes sharp. "Acting like what?" "Like you don't want to be here. Like you don't want to be with me." Camila bit her lip and said nothing. Michael's heart sank, but he pushed the doubt down. Maybe he was imagining it all. Maybe it was just stress. Maybe he was boring, too tired from work, too rough around the edges. He blamed himself. Determined to save what was left of their marriage, Michael planned a surprise anniversary dinner. He booked a quiet restaurant, arranged a babysitter, and even bought a small gift. On the day, he dressed carefully, nervously rehearsing what he would say. But when he got home, the door was locked and a note was taped to it. "Girls' night. Don't wait up." Michael's stomach twisted. "Girls' night again," he muttered, voice hollow. He waited until midnight, hoping she'd come back, but when she finally slipped in, her laughter was louder than usual, and the scent of someone else's cologne lingered faintly on her coat. The following weeks only deepened his unease. He started noticing little things: a strange name flashing on her locked phone screen just before it went dark, an unfamiliar contact she always excused as work stuff. He tried to look away, telling himself it wasn't his business. But the nagging voice inside wouldn't quiet. Then one afternoon, his son Jake, 10 years old, usually shy, blurted out something that cut through the fog. Dad, Jake said, eyes wide. Uncle Shane is staying the night again. Michael froze, heart hammering. Uncle Shane? His brother's best friend who had always been around but never this much. Why does he stay so often? Michael asked, forcing casual. Jake shrugged, glancing toward the living room. Mom says he's just visiting, but he's in our guest room a lot. The room seemed to close in around Michael. A sinking feeling settled deep in his gut, sharper than any physical pain. That night, as he lay awake staring at the ceiling, the pieces started to fit together in his mind. The late nights, the secret texts, the cold silences. He didn't want to believe it, but the truth was clawing its way out from the shadows, and soon he wouldn't be able to ignore it any longer. Chapter 3. Discovery of the Affair. The unease in Michael's chest grew heavy enough to suffocate him. Every night, he lay awake with the question burning hotter. What exactly was going on behind his back? The silence in his house became deafening. The smiles and everyday chatter with Camila fell hollow, like a mask worn by a stranger. After wrestling with himself for days, Michael realized that the only way to find out the truth was to see it with his own eyes. He hated himself for it. This felt like crossing a line, invading the sanctity of his own home and marriage. But the doubt clawing at his mind was unbearable. He bought a small, inexpensive hidden camera and a voice recorder from a local electronics store. Simple devices, easy to install. Late one night, after everyone was asleep, Michael crept around the house, placing the camera discreetly in the hallway near the guest room, the one Shane had been using. He also hid the call recorder inside the living room lamp, where most conversations happened. His hands trembled as he worked, knowing that what he was about to discover could break him. Days passed. Michael tried to carry on normally at work, but his mind was elsewhere, tangled in paranoia and fear. When he finally plugged the devices into his laptop and began to watch, the pain that hit him was like a punch to the gut. The video was grainy but unmistakable. There, in the dim light of the guest room, was Camila, his wife, locked in an embrace with Shane. Their bodies tangled, breath heavy, faces flushed with passion. Shane's hand slid possessively around her waist. Camila's head rested on his shoulder as they whispered, laughed, and kissed. Michael blinked, nauseous. The man in the video was more than just his brother's best friend. Shane was his best friend too, a business partner he had trusted for years. Michael had once bailed Shane out of jail, had stood by him when nobody else would. And now Shane was stealing the only woman Michael had ever truly loved. He hit pause and sank back in his chair, shaking. The betrayal was a knife twisting in his heart. But the torment didn't end with the images. Michael switched to the audio files next, conversations recorded just days earlier. Camila's voice, clear and cold, sent shivers down his spine. Michael's just a paycheck with a pulse. He's lucky I stayed this long. Michael's fists clenched so tightly his knuckles turned white. Paycheck with a pulse. After everything he'd done to build their life, to provide, to stay loyal, the conversation continued. Shane's voice, low and amused. Yeah, he's been a sucker for too long. You got the upper hand now. Camila laughed, a cruel, bitter sound. I don't care if he finds out. I'm done pretending. He's boring, Michael. Weak. Pathetic. Michael's throat tightened. All the late nights, the tired mornings after brutal days at the site, the sacrifices he'd made, they were all invisible to her. One clip, recorded one sleepless night, shook him harder than the rest. Camila's mocking voice, loud and degrading, from the living room. You should have seen him last night. Tried so hard to keep up. Bless his heart, but let's just say I've had better. Shane chuckled, eyes gleaming with triumph. Poor Mike. I bet he didn't even notice you weren't really there. Michael swallowed bile. His private failures, the very thing he had been embarrassed about, had become a joke to the two people he trusted most. He didn't confront Camila or Shane. Not yet. That moment, when anger would explode into chaos, was not his style. Instead, he kept collecting evidence, recording conversations whenever he could. Every word, every gesture fed the growing fire inside him. But beneath the rage, a cold, calculating plan began to take shape. Michael knew the battle ahead wouldn't be won with yelling or tears. It would be a war fought with strategy and patience. And he was ready. Chapter 4. The Silent Storm. Michael sat at the kitchen table, stirring his black coffee absent-mindedly. The morning sun filtered through the curtains, casting pale light over the neatly set breakfast. Camila hovered nearby, humming a cheerful tune, flipping pancakes as if the world hadn't just shattered beneath her feet. But Michael felt nothing. Not anger, not pain, just a hollow numbness, a silent storm brewing deep inside him. He met Camila's bright eyes with a blank stare, smiling politely when she asked if he was okay. "Fine," he said. "Just tired from work." Camila's lips twitched, half a smirk, half a challenge, but she said nothing. Over the next few days, Michael carefully played the part of the oblivious husband, the man blind to the cracks in their marriage. He returned home from the construction site each evening, worked around the house, joked with the kids, even helped Camila with grocery shopping, all while silently mapping the destruction. It was exhausting, like walking on thin ice, but Michael knew exploding now would only give Camila and Shane the upper hand. He needed time, patience, control. Camila, however, seemed to sense his silence as weakness. Her cocky confidence grew with each passing day. One afternoon, they sat in the living room discussing bills when she casually dropped a bombshell. "Mike," she said, eyes sparkling with cold amusement, "I think it's time we restructure the family finances." Michael frowned. "What do you mean?" Camila leaned back, smirking. "Put everything, our house, the company shares, the savings, in my name. It makes sense, right? I handle the bills. I pay the expenses. It's cleaner that way." He blinked, pretending to consider it. Sounds convenient." She laughed, a sharp sound. "Convenient? Maybe. But fair? Absolutely. After all, you're hardly here anymore." Michael's jaw clenched, but he said nothing. Meanwhile, beneath this charade of calm, Michael was busy building his quiet army. He had quietly reached out to a high-profile attorney known for handling messy divorces and corporate battles. A private investigator trailed Camila and Shane, documenting their secret meetings and suspicious behavior. A cybersecurity expert worked tirelessly to uncover hidden digital evidence, emails, transfers, encrypted chats. Piece by piece, Michael gathered proof of a deeper betrayal than he had ever imagined. It wasn't just about cheating. Camila and Shane were plotting a coup. They planned to push Michael out of the house, lock him out, change the locks at 7 o'clock one evening when no one would be home. They intended to steal his share of the company, quietly transfer assets, and force him out of his own family. As Michael dug deeper, the betrayal cut wider. His own blood was tangled in the web. His parents, people he had trusted since childhood, had been swayed by Camila's charm and Shane's silver tongue. His brother, once like a brother to him, had turned cold and distant, whispering behind his back, aligning with the conspirators. Michael's heart broke again, not from loss, but from disbelief. Camila's power wasn't just in her affair. It was in her ability to manipulate everyone around her, to rewrite their family story as if he were the villain in his own life. And as the pieces fell into place, Michael's silent storm swelled, ready to break. But he remained quiet, calm, calculated, because now he wasn't just fighting for his marriage. He was fighting for his life. Chapter 5. The Barbecue. Labor Day morning dawned bright and clear, the kind of day that begged for a backyard barbecue and laughter ringing through the air. But Michael knew better than to expect anything lighthearted. When Camila called him the night before with an invitation, almost an afterthought, to the family barbecue, his gut clenched with a mix of dread and icy determination. He agreed. "Sure, I'll be there," he said, voice steady. Inside, his mind raced with plans and warnings. Every step he took was measured, every smile rehearsed. Pulling into the driveway of his childhood home, Michael noticed the familiar hum of activity, his parents bustling around, setting up tables, hanging decorations. His brother was there, chatting animatedly with Camila's sister, their faces too bright, too forced. Shane was leaning casually against the porch railing, a six-pack of beer in hand, smirking like he owned the place. Camila greeted him at the door with a warm hug and a flawless smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Mike, you made it. So glad you're here." Her voice was syrupy sweet, but Michael caught the slight edge of something sharper beneath. "Wouldn't miss it," he replied evenly. The backyard was alive with chatter and laughter, the kids running around, cousins trading playful jabs. But beneath the surface, Michael felt the undercurrent, the subtle exchanges, the quick glances, the way everyone seemed a little too synchronized. It was a silent chorus, a pact unspoken but understood. Camila flitted from guest to guest, the perfect hostess. When Shane appeared with beers, offering one to Michael with a cocky grin, Michael took it without a word, eyes locked on the man who had stolen so much. Throughout the afternoon, Michael kept to himself, pretending to enjoy the food, the sun on his face, the noise of family around him. But inside, his mind was a storm of anger and betrayal. At one point, Camila sidled up beside him, her voice low and casual. "Honey, could you do me a favor? The special sauce is in the garage. Can you grab it for me?" Michael's heart skipped, but he nodded. "Sure thing." The garage door creaked as he stepped inside, the smell of gasoline and old paint heavy in the air. His eyes adjusted to the dimness, and then he saw it. Two large suitcases, neatly packed, sitting side by side. His heart pounded. Next to them, a crisp, printed note taped to the wall caught the faint light. His breath hitched as he read the words, cold and cruel. "We voted. You're out, loser. New locks go on at 7 p.m. He felt his world tilt. He looked through the small window of the garage, catching sight of the backyard again. There, under the wide oak tree, the entire family was gathered. Camila stood with a raised hand, calm and commanding. His parents, his brother, even the kids, they all lifted their hands in unison. The silent verdict. Michael's fingers trembled as he pulled out his phone, snapping a photo of the note, then another of the family voting. He held the screen in front of his eyes, the cold blue glow reflecting the storm inside him. A slow, bitter smile curved his lips. Without a word, he turned away from the garage, stepping back into the sunlit backyard where everyone continued their charade. He walked to the porch, pulled out his phone, and made the call. The line clicked through. On the other end, a voice answered, calm, expectant. Michael's voice was low, steady, and full of quiet menace. "I'm done playing games." And with that, he disappeared into the night. The next morning, 88 missed calls waited for him, her lawyer frantic and furious. But Michael didn't answer. Chapter 6. The Fallout. The next morning, Michael's phone vibrated relentlessly on the kitchen counter. 88 missed calls. 88 frantic rings from Camila's lawyer. And still, Michael didn't answer. He sat quietly at the small breakfast table in his rented apartment, sipping black coffee and staring out the window. The world outside was calm, unaware of the storm raging just beneath the surface of his life. Inside, Camila was unraveling. Her texts turned desperate, pleading. Her voicemails, shaky, filled with venom and broken promises. "Michael, please, we can fix this. Just talk to me. Shane and I, we made mistakes, but we love you." Michael's jaw tightened. Love? The word was poisoned now, twisted by betrayal. Across town, Shane was pacing his cramped office, brow slick with sweat. His usual cocky grin replaced by a grimace of panic. His phone buzzed constantly, his accounts frozen, business partners calling with suspicion. The fallout was hitting him hard and fast. What they didn't know, and what they never suspected, was how thoroughly Michael had dismantled their world while they slept. During the dark hours after the barbecue, Michael had moved swiftly and quietly. The business account, the one they had all believed was untouchable, was drained. Every last cent moved into a secure account under Michael's control. He had triggered the clause in their prenuptial agreement, a clause they all conveniently forgot existed. Infidelity equals full forfeiture. It was poetic justice. The same betrayal that had broken his heart now crushed their financial foundations. Michael's phone calls to a high-profile attorney and a private investigator had unearthed more than just infidelity. Shane had been hiding money, funneling it offshore, falsifying business records. Michael reported it all, IRS, state fraud commissions, and even filed lawsuits for defamation and theft. He wasn't just fighting for his dignity. He was dismantling their empire piece by piece. Meanwhile, the house, their shared home, once a sanctuary, was no longer hers. Michael had moved fast, legally evicting Camila. She was forced into a cheap motel, her pleas for mercy echoing down empty hotel corridors. The family fractured further. His kids, once bound by innocence, split like a fault line. One, still loyal to her father, returned to Michael's side, seeking refuge in the only stable ground left. The other, disillusioned and angry, left Camila as well, cutting ties with the woman who had shattered their world. Michael stood on the edge of it all, the ruins of his former life around him. Yet, amid the chaos, a strange sense of calm settled. He wasn't just surviving. He was reclaiming everything they tried to take from him. And for the first time in months, he allowed himself to breathe. Chapter 7. Begging and Breakdown. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows over the cracked pavement as Camila's car pulled into the parking lot of the small cafe where Michael now spent most of his free time. She sat there for a moment, hands trembling on the steering wheel, heart pounding like a drum in a war zone. The weight of everything she had lost was suffocating: her husband, her home, her dignity. And worst of all, Shane was gone. He'd left her just days after the fallout, blaming her for everything, disappearing like the coward he was. Her breath hitched. She wiped tears from her eyes and stepped out of the car, clutching her purse tightly as if it were the only thing holding her together. She spotted him almost immediately. Michael, sitting alone at a corner table, a black coffee untouched before him, eyes staring through the steam rising in the cool air. Her voice was barely a whisper as she approached. Michael. He looked up slowly, his gaze sharp but unreadable. For a moment, all the years they had spent together hung in the air between them, good and bad, love and betrayal tangled in one impossible knot. Camila dropped to her knees, the cracked concrete biting into her skin. Tears streamed down her face as she reached out, trembling hands clutching his jacket. "Please don't do this," she sobbed. "I was stupid. I was scared. I thought I was alone. We can fix this. I swear, I'll do anything." Michael's jaw clenched. He studied her for a long moment, the woman who once held his world, now broken and begging at his feet. But the pain she caused ran deeper than his forgiveness. "You didn't just cheat," he said slowly, his voice cold and steady like ice sliding over stone. "You didn't just betray me. You rallied a mob, your family, your lover, everyone you convinced to turn against me. You tried to destroy me. And for what? A lie wrapped in cheap promises." Camila's cries grew louder, raw and ragged. "I know I was wrong. Shane left me. He blamed me for everything. I have nothing, Michael. No one. Please, just give me a chance." He stood up, towering over her kneeling form, his eyes hard with resolve. "Enjoy your new reality," he said, voice low and final. He turned without another word. Camila collapsed, screaming his name into the empty parking lot, her sobs swallowed by the indifferent sky. Chapter 8. A New Life and Final Twist. The brisk autumn air felt different this year, clean, sharp, almost like a fresh start. Michael stood outside the small office building that now bore his name in bold letters. Davis & Company. Construction Services. The sleek new sign was a far cry from the cramped, shadowed corners of the business he once shared with Shane, a reminder that this time, he was building something on his own terms. Inside, Nova was busy at her desk, typing up contracts with the same quiet focus she'd shown from day one. She glanced up, catching his eye and offering a warm smile that melted something long frozen inside him. "Morning, Mike," she said softly, her voice steady and kind. "Coffee's on me today." Michael returned the smile, feeling a lightness he hadn't known for years. Nova wasn't just his paralegal. She was a constant in a world that had been anything but stable. Loyal, patient, and unshaken by the chaos he'd lived through. They'd started dating slowly, cautiously, no rush, no pressure. It was different this time, different from the lies and broken promises. It was honest. "I think this is going to be a good year," he said, running a hand through his hair. "Better than any I've had in a long time." Nova nodded. "You earned it." Outside his office window, the world moved on. But Michael kept his guard up, especially when it came to his family. They reached out, calls, texts, even visits. His parents, once so quick to side with Camila and Shane, now awkward and uncertain. His brother, half-hearted apologies, peppered with excuses. Michael listened, but kept his distance. He wasn't ready to forget the betrayals, the calculated moves to push him out. "I'm not the man I used to be," he told Nova one evening as they walked through a quiet park, the sun dipping low. "But I'm not going to be anyone's doormat again." She squeezed his hand, grounding him. "You're stronger than you realize." Meanwhile, Camila's world continued to crumble. Broke and jobless, she was now facing criminal charges for financial misconduct, the hidden embezzlement, the falsified documents Shane had used to cover their tracks. The final blow came unexpectedly. Camila's own sister, Riley, tipped off the authorities. A cold calculation to save herself from prosecution, but also a personal betrayal that cut deeper than any knife. Michael heard about it through quiet whispers at his new office. The sister who once smiled at family dinners had turned on her own blood. It was fitting in a way. One crisp evening, as Michael locked up the office for the night, he paused and looked out at the city lights shimmering in the distance. He thought about the years lost, the battles fought in silence, and the quiet victories he now savored. Loyalty is a quiet strength until it's betrayed. Then it becomes a storm. And I became the storm.